Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome back, listeners, to the SDSU podcast. I'm your host, Andre Hagberdian. We'll be joined shortly by my co-host, Paul Garrison. This is episode 107. It's a double episode for Thanksgiving. We just put out episode 106, which was our recap of the loss to San Jose State this past weekend and a little preview of the game against Fresno State on Saturday night, the final game of the season, the final game of Brady Hoke's head coaching tenure at San Diego State. This one is still football related, but it's really more looking towards the future. We got a chance to interview Anthony McMillian again, who is a class of 2024 verbal commit to San Diego State. He's a local San Diego kid from Mater Dei Catholic, running back. He committed earlier in the summer to San Diego State, and obviously with the announcement of Brady Hoke's retirement, you know, a lot of things up in the air with the 11 class of 24 verbal commits that San Diego State currently has, and how many of those guys are either sticking regardless of the coaching change, waiting to see what the coaching change is before they make their decision, or decommitting and moving elsewhere. Obviously, we got a chance to talk to Anthony and ask him what he's planning on doing. Our original conversation with Anthony was episode 56 back in January, which was a more in-depth interview going through his background and his high school days and things like that. This one is a little bit shorter interview because we wanted to mainly touch on, you know, what's happened since his commitment and his final high school season. So I do recommend if you go back and listen to the earlier interview to get a better idea about who Anthony is, if you did not have a chance to listen to that, or you need a refresher. Our second interview in this episode is Anthony's high school coach at Mater Dei Catholic, John Joyner, who has been the coach there for the last 14 years, head coach for the last 14 years, and who also decided to retire. And we asked him about his reasoning about that. And plus, he gives us a perspective on not just Anthony McMillian, but another class of 24 recruit, Isaiah Buxton, who decommitted from Arizona. And so that he is still looking for his collegiate school, and San Diego State is one of the 3 or 4 teams in the mix. Plus, he, you know, as a local high school head football coach for a top program, he has some perspective on San Diego State recruiting local San Diego kids. So we asked him a little bit about that. And, you know, now that he's retired or retiring, you know, he can give us perspective, maybe a little bit more unfiltered, because he's not going to be in the mix with that. So both interviews were great. We hope you guys enjoy that. Afterwards, Paul and I kind of discussed those interviews. Plus, we gave our thoughts on San Diego State's head coaching search, the rumors and reports that are out there about who they have interviewed, who they might interview. So we tried to give our thoughts and our perspective on what's out there. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Hope you guys enjoy your time with friends and family this weekend. I hope you enjoy a double episode on this holiday. And let's get to the interview with Anthony first, followed by Coach Joyner. I want to welcome back Anthony McMillian to the SDSU podcast. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me. How y'all doing today?
Very well, man. Happy
Doing
Thanksgiving.
great. Yeah, Thanksgiving week. We the last time we spoke to you on the podcast was episode 56 in January, which is
Yes, sir.
about 10
Crazy.
months ago.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
Back then you were, you hadn't committed yet. You committed to San Diego State verbally later after that episode. You just had your final senior season of high school
Yes, sir.
that you just finished. Obviously, the big news around San Diego and around San Diego State is Coach Hoke's announced retirement at the end of the season. As a verbal commit, how did you first learn about it, and what were your initial thoughts?
I first learned about it through Twitter. I had saw it on Twitter first that he was gonna retire after the season, and then after that, like I talked to running back coach, Coach Bill, about it. Me and him talked about everything, and I feel for him. I met Coach Hoke before, and he's like a really good guy, like very genuine person. And seeing him go, and I wasn't able to play for him, it's a little sad, but still got to go up there and do my thing, and I just hope the well for him.
A lot of people, when upon hearing news about a coaching change, whether it's a retirement, a firing, or whatever, they think about, okay, how does that affect recruiting, and how does that affect people that are already verbally committed? Does his announcement impact your commitment to San Diego State in any way?
No, sir, because going into like my recruitment, I was always told don't commit to coaching, commit to the school. So, I've built great relationships with the coaches, but like I've also fell in love with the school and everything. So, him leaving, it's sad, but I'm committed to San Diego State for the school and their program.
Now, aside from you, there are 10 other verbal commitments to the class of 24. I mean, has there been any kind of communication with all of you, given all of the changes and stuff taking place?
Not much. I don't I don't talk to them a lot. I don't really know everyone. The one person I have talked to, well, the two people I've talked to really was I forgot his last name, but he goes to Carlsbad. His name Will, the receiver.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Yeah, I
right.
Oh,
talked
yeah.
to him, and then also I kind of feel bad. I forgot his name. I had met him at the game. It was one of the old linemen. He was like tall, and yeah, me and him we chopped it up a lot at the game, and we were just talking about it. But I haven't really been in contact with them a lot, not much. But hopefully, I feel like they feel the same and won't decommit, and we can all see each other up there at state.
Absolutely. So you were
Was
telling
it
us,
Kai Holek?
Kai, I think so. That does sound familiar. Yes, sir.
Got it.
you were telling me that these plans to enroll early and be able to kind of get that um, college career started, man. What did you have to do to kind of to make that happen?
Not gonna lie, it was kind of a lot because in modern day, you have to have 25 hours of service hours for your senior year to be able to graduate. So I had to do that, and then I have to take an English class to make up for like half of that semester. I'm gonna be gone, and then I have to
Right.
do also a religion class. So I basically had to complete two classes in like what was it? A month and a half I finished it, and then do my service hours as well. But I finished everything, so I'm all set to graduate December 22nd.
Dude, congratulations.
Thank you.
What what went behind your decision to, give up your final semester of high school and enroll early to San Diego State?
I just feel like it's just getting up there, getting used to the school with the workouts and like the environment and everything. Cause I'd rather do that early in January than have to wait till like the summer of June. So I'll already be up there. I already know the program and I'll already be comfortable with everything going on.
Your longtime friend and teammate at Modern Day, Isaiah Buxton, he just decommitted from Arizona.
Yes, sir.
He mentioned in an article, he was interviewed by 247 Sports. Nevada is a school he's looking into. You had Nevada among your finalists. Any chance Bucks could sway you to join him in Reno if he chooses that direction, or any way you're going to try to sway him towards San Diego State? How's those conversations going?
Yeah, I'm joking with him all the time. Like the first day I saw it when he decommitted, I had texted him and I had sent the red and black circle,
Yeah.
and I was like, where home is, 30 minutes away, and then he just said, "We'll see." So I always every time I see him, I just tell him he knows where home is, and wherever he goes, I'm always love him, always support him, but I always try to tell him every day. So hopefully, he just makes the best decision for him and his family.
Well,
Awesome.
catch us up on your season, man. How did your season go? And not just for you, but also for modern day.
It was compared to our last two seasons before, it wasn't the best season. We lost to Madison first round playoffs. But as for our season, I feel like, we just made a lot of mistakes. Like we just couldn't execute a lot of the time. Like against Madison, that's a real good Madison team over there, very scary Madison team. We had a specific game plan going into the game. We just couldn't execute. So that's just on the offense. Our defense played very, very well, but you can't win games if you don't score points. But looking back on it, can't go back to it. So just gotta reminisce about the memories. But it's time to move on and time to go play ball.
What did you learn about yourself as a player this season?
Um, I learned I learned a lot that you have to be able to, how I put this in words, like better encouragement, if that makes sense. Cause like again, we started 0-3, and like last year we had like better leaders like Trey Edwards, Dominic Nankill, Jerry McLaren. Those were our leaders on the team. But with them being gone, I learned a lot about how you have to like step up and fill those roles. So us going 0-3 this past season, having to come in and like lead this young team and like, tell them to keep their heads up. We have a long season ahead of us. So I feel like that's a thing I learned about myself, is about encouragement and being a leader.
Your head coach at Mater Dei, Coach Joyner, announced his retirement. What can you say about him as a coach and his leadership at Mater Dei?
Oh, that's where I learned it from. He's top dog. He was head coach. He was our leader. He always taught us, the best men make the best crusaders. So, us, not even on the football aspect, but just being better men in life, that would just be way, way better than what football is. So, him leading us, always telling us to keep our heads up. Like, he has that serious tone. Like when you look at him, you might look like he's always serious, but he always has like a joking manner when he's talking to us. So I love Coach Joyner, and I'm wishing the best for him and his family.
For our high school football fans who are listening, what name or names should they look out for Mater Dei next year? You're going to be gone, obviously.
Yes, sir.
Who's the next in line?
I'll definitely say our quarterback, Cartel Purvis, and, receivers, Matthew Carr, Isaiah Cook. On the defensive side, Jeremiah Castillo, that was our middle linebacker last year. Also, Trey Jefferson, Jordan Dumoron, and then also one of our strong safeties, Makai. A lot of those, they're sophomores and juniors, but they played a key role this past season. So I feel like them working through the offseason, getting a lot better. They're going to turn a lot of heads this year.
So for yourself, as you talked about, planning to enroll early at state. So you're only a couple months away from college. What are you doing now, so that you're ready and focused for that period to come?
Lately I've just been working on lifting a lot with Coach V. He's been my trainer, my weight training coach for the past 5, 6 years. So like just lifting with him a lot, getting stronger, and also I'm working out with Coach Van, getting better with my footwork and getting my speed up as well.
Yeah, I think that you graduating. I don't know. Coach Joyner probably was like, you know what, I can't get better than this, so I'm gonna. It's time. It's time. Um, but you're one of the stars of high school players. In San Diego, obviously. You obviously know a lot of other ones. What does SDSU need to do for more athletes to make the same decision that you did, to stay local, like you said, 30 minutes away? We talked to Isaiah. How does San Diego State need to recruit San Diego to make that happen more often, do you think?
I just feel like, with San Diego State, there's a lot of underrated San Diego athletes. Like, there's a lot of guys over here that I feel like if State would look into it more, like, they could go to State and, like, we could change the program with 24, 25, 26. Like, doesn't matter the class. There's just a lot of guys. So I feel like they just need to look more in the right down the street from them. Like it's good that they're looking all over the place. You gotta find guys where you find guys, but I feel like if you can find some guys like straight down the street, that's not too bad either.
No doubt.
Do
And
you, do
Coach
you
Matt.
think do you think that with the new coaching staff that will come to San Diego State, that should or will be more of an emphasis than it has in the past?
I think so. I feel like, maybe with the new coaching staff that's coming, maybe they will talk about that more amongst themselves and hopefully they can do that. But, I don't know too much about the new coaching staff coming in, but that's what I hope that will happen.
The it seems like every year, every time a new coaching staff comes in, you know, recruiting San Diego is a huge emphasis, and obviously they put one of their best guys there, Coach Maddox, as the area recruiter. What can you tell us about your relationship and just the person who Coach Maddox is?
When I very first met him, he wanted me to play linebacker at state, so that was very funny. But me and him just built a big relationship. He's a very cool guy. He tells me straight up. Like a lot of the times, he told me like at the San Diego State tournament for 7-on-7. He told me there were a lot of good things he saw, and then he also was telling me a lot of things that he saw that he thinks I can improve on. That if I change these little mechanics, that it'll just completely change my game. So, I built a very good relationship with Coach Maddox.
Yeah, when we talked to you in January, we were talking to you a lot about running back, and you let it known that it was Coach Maddox who was recruiting you, and that they were looking at you at linebacker. At what point did that shift? Because when you committed as a running back. At what point did that discussions with San Diego State shift into okay, we want you as a running back?
It was kind of like 2 months before I committed. So what would that be? I don't know the exact date, but I remember being on a phone call with Coach Bill right when he got hired. And I had asked him, I was like, "Is my offered as running back or linebacker?" And he was like, "Man, it says running back." So that's why I really know 100% that, that I should definitely be looking at them. They were just telling me like, "Yeah, we like you on both sides of the ball, but we want you coming here running the ball." So I was like, "Yes, sir."
Well, you talked about earlier when you were talking about your football high school senior season, it wasn't as good as the last two seasons, right? Back-to-back state championship runs. When you reflect on your high school career, how amazing was that time to have those great runs?
I felt like it was very amazing. You built like people say, a lot of people say like high school, you build the most memories. So I feel like I built a lot of great memories, not even with football, but with the people that I was playing with. Like a lot of the seniors from last year and the seniors before that in class of 22, like we built a lot of great memories and we, had like a brothership that you can't take away from us.
You mentioned that you've been training with Coach V. I mean, Mount Miguel, man, they're putting in some work. How enjoyable is it to, they're still alive, about to be in the championship game against Chula Vista. I mean, how satisfying is it, watching obviously from a distance, these people that you care about who've mentored you, being able to do their thing now, not as just a coordinator, right? But now as like the head coach.
Yes, sir. It just feels great because Coach V, he can do it all. Like he calls the best plays in the county. Like he just calls the right plays at the right times, always. So it's just like seeing everyone over there. It's just like very heartwarming. Just see that they're going to play in the CIF. I'm gonna be there actually. So, so
So,
hopefully they go out there and win by a lot. So.
you're entering a running back room at San Diego State with a lot of talent. And you're moving from being, the star, the big man on campus, and now you're gonna be flipping it and you're gonna be the young guy and the freshman coming into the room. I guess just what is your mindset about entering that room and being a good teammate for those guys?
Just going there and like, just seeing like with the older guys, just seeing little stuff they're doing that I could put into my game that showed at a college level. Cause them guys been there before, they know what they're doing. They played on the college level. So seeing how they work, seeing how they think, I have to change my mindset to that because it's a lot more competitive than high school. So I'm just gonna have to change my mindset and just see how they're doing it and just going there and working. If they see that I'm putting in a lot of good work, we're gonna build great relationships and hopefully we can see what happens.
I saw recently on social media you're committed to playing in the McCossie Bowl 7.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us more about when that game is, where it is, and how people can get more info on it?
Um, I actually forgot what the date is. Coach V told me, but I think it's the
Okay,
first week of December. First week of December, and I know it'll be at Mesa College. And
got it.
then with a lot of info, I'm not sure on like everything, but I know it'll be at Mesa College the first week of December. But basically, just Coach V just getting a lot of guys, from San Diego County, putting together the best team, and guys up there premium for LA, and we're just gonna battle it out and see who's the best.
Cool.
Exciting.
All right, man. We appreciate you taking the time. We're looking forward to you putting on that red and black. obviously we'll have a chance to see you up close in spring camp,
Yes,
with
sir.
not just some new players, but a new coaching staff potentially. So we're excited
Yes,
for
sir.
that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
We want to welcome football coach John Joyner to the SDSU podcast. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Very well, thank you.
We're doing great. Thank you for
Great.
taking the time. I know you have a busy schedule. First question, we got high school football championships going on upcoming this weekend. You have some friends and former assistants who have taken Mount Miguel to new heights. They are in the CIF final against Chula Vista. How fun has it been watching Coach V and that crew do what they've done?
Oh, it's been awesome. I mean, but it's not something that is kind of catching us off by surprise. I worked with Verlaine and I worked with Aaron Jones for a very long time. Ruben Braswell, Don Zermano, Mark Quinlan. I mean, those guys are brothers to me. They're not acquaintances or colleagues. Those guys, I love those guys, and so super excited for them and super proud of them, but not shocked at all.
You were the coach at Mater Dei, head football coach. Anthony McMillian, who we just got a chance to talk to for the second time, he's verbally committed to San Diego State. As he told us, he's ready to sign and enroll early in next semester. What can you tell us about Anthony as a player and as a teammate?
Well, I think I would start with a teammate. Fantastic kid. I think that, and I'm really excited about him going to San Diego State. When it comes to recruiting, I kind of, I'm involved in their recruitment, but I stay out of their final decision. And I remember when he told me, he said, I'm going to commit, on Wednesday. I think it was like a Monday, and he's like, I think I'm going to commit Wednesday. And I kind of wanted to ask him, and then he goes, I'm going to go to State. And I was I thought that was the best choice for him. But phenomenal teammate. Really, I think it took a huge step forward this year, leadership wise. But he's always happy-go-lucky. He's got a great smile. He is a phenomenal teammate. He's a guy that actually genuinely cares about other guys. And I know some of that stuff is like cliche football coaching stuff, but Anthony, his freshman year was like the COVID spring season, and so he comes in his sophomore year. And we're very talented. We had a Division I tailback, Nico Mosley's at USD, and he kind of was his backup. And then late in the season, his sophomore year, he burst on the scene and began getting offers and began becoming, one of the top recruits on the West Coast. And he just handled all of that really well. And he's genuinely that person. Like the guy, I'm sure the interview with you, that's genuinely how he is all the time. He's rarely in a funky mood. He's rarely not smiling. Very positive kid. And then football wise, I think, his play speaks for itself. Super physical kid. Really, I wasn't sure for a while what side of the ball he'd end up. I think offense and tailback is a great decision for him, and that's what he wants. But he does everything. I mean, I think he's one thing for a kid his size. He does a lot of things small backs do. Like he catches the ball really well. Sometimes when you have a 220-pound back, 225-pound back, they're just bruisers. Anthony does a lot of stuff. He's got breakaway speed. He catches it really well. He understands, he's pass protector. He's willing blocker.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to have a great career.
Staying with that theme of just who Anthony is, what does he like to coach?
Oh, it's so much fun. Everybody, should get a chance to coach a guy like that. We've had, I don't know why. I mean, I think it's just being in San Diego, but we've had in my career at Mater Dei Catholic, we've had a ton of military kids, and he is a typical military kid. Yes, sir. No, sir. Very respectful. Comes from an unbelievably supportive family. I mean, his parents have been positive and supportive throughout his entire 4 years. When you're a football coach, you have two rosters. You have a roster of kids you worry about and kids you don't worry about. For 4 years, Anthony's always been on the don't worry about list. I know what he is in the classroom. I know what teachers think about him. I know what his teammates think about him. There's very few times where I've ever had to even have a serious man-to-man talk with him about anything. It's usually, hey, go talk to Bobby and take care of this for me. And boom, I got you, coach. Don't worry about it. It'll get taken care of. He's that kind of leader.
One thing that I've been impressed in the conversations that I've had with him, you mentioned Nico before that, but we know about Nico because Anthony's told us about him and about how he is able, even at a young age, to know that the person who's in front of him is a learning opportunity for him, and that usually, you don't. Again, it's sometimes it can be cliche, but I think for a lot of these guys, they don't realize that until a little bit later, and he seems to have gotten this really early. Um, what kind of student of the game have you seen from him, and him being able to, grab something from here, from, coach here, a player here, things like that?
I've seen a huge jump in the last 2 years with the IQ of the game. So you guys also have to understand, Anthony looked like this in the 8th grade. He was, he so he's always been physically able to just kind of do whatever he wants, and that's dangerous for some guys. He reminded me a lot of Trey Edwards when I saw Trey Edwards in the 8th grade and 7th grade, and he just physically overwhelmed kids. And Mac has that same thing when he was a young guy. Those guys have a hard time sometimes when they get to the level where everybody's the same size and at the same speed all of a sudden. So Anthony never really had to be a smart player because he could just physically do whatever he wants. The last couple of years, he's really started to become a complete player, and I think that, like, understanding what pass protection means for a tailback. And when you go to San Diego State, if you don't pass protect, you're not getting the ball. If you can't catch the ball, you're not going to be in on 2nd and long or 3rd down. So him understanding that, hey, every tool I add to my tool chest keeps me on the field, I think has been a huge, like a transition in his game. But he loves it. I mean, he really does. And then that's kind of like I said, I don't want to come on and give all the same coaching talk, but like, he loves it. I mean, he's a football junkie, and that's why him and I get along so well, because he just wants to talk ball. He wants to be in the weight room. He wants to do things with football. And I think that learning and being able to kind of split carries and being able to understand, like, hey, I just want to win, that's going to help him, because a lot of guys who are the 3-star, 4-star recruit go to college and they're not used to sitting. And they're not used to being behind guys that are 20 years old that have established themselves. I think Anthony has a very good perspective on, like, hey, if I do what I'm supposed to do, if I do what I'm taught, coach, and just I'm gonna get my time. And when I get my carries, I'll make it happen.
You mentioned this a little bit earlier about not knowing what side he would be playing potentially. When we first spoke to him in January, before he verbally committed, he said San Diego State was looking at him as a linebacker because Kurt Maddox was his primary recruiter. And I remember asking him, what do you prefer? And he gave the very diplomatic answer, whatever the coaches want.
Yeah.
But now today, yeah. But talking to him now and he tells a story about how when Jimmy Beal, the running backs coach, he asked him, "What are you guys looking for me at?" And he said running back. He was really happy, and that might have been the seal of the deal. And so, where do you think you mentioned that you think running back or on that side of the ball would be best for him? Why do you have that feeling?
Well, and let me preface by saying my opinion means nothing in the next 4 years, 5 years, but I just think he's more natural on the offensive side of the ball. I think it comes easier to him. I think he's a heck of a linebacker, and I coached linebacker. I coached him for the last 2 years at our linebacker, and he's really progressed greatly on that side of the ball. For me, I think he's dynamic with the ball in his hands, and like I said, I don't, when you're 6'1", 220, he's going to carry 225. He's going to run, 4.6, and he's got, 2% body. I mean, the kid he's built for it, but he catches it really well. He does like a lot of little things that big backs don't get. So I just kind of think he's complete on that side. And to be honest, all joking aside, up until about spring, I would say like April, May, he started taking trips. I don't think he knew what side of the ball. And then he visited some schools and he came back and he said, Coach, after spring, he said, Coach, I want to play running back. I said, okay, well, let's narrow down the offers you have at running back. And he had to cut some big name schools out of there, and that's the other thing too that I think is going to help him be successful, is very self-confident. He believes in himself. But I just think Ryan Lindley and Jimmy Beal and those guys on the offense side of the ball did a fantastic job building a relationship with him. And yeah, Kurt Maddox was the first one to offer, and Demetrius Sumler and the defensive staff. That's because the defensive staff visits Modern Day all the time. You know, Demetrius and Kurt, they're at our practices all the time. And so they just had kind of established that relationship first. But I thought the offensive staff did a fantastic job just getting to know him and saying, hey, this is who we are, take it. And I think he fell in love really quickly.
You mentioned also earlier that you were, when you heard he was going to state, that you thought it was the best fit for him. Why do you think that?
I just think that I think those guys are genuine. I trust Ryan Lindley. I trust Beal. I think that those guys are men of their word. I was worried, and this is not a shot at anybody. This isn't a dig, but I thought there was some schools, and this is part of recruiting, that say, hey, you want to be a tailback? We'll bring you in as a tailback, and then 5 months into his career, they go, hey, never mind, we're going to move you to linebacker or something like that. I didn't get that feeling with San Diego State. I felt like they were genuinely recruiting him on that side of the ball. I'm a San Diego guy. I want my guys to go to San Diego State. Not every San Diego kid should go to San Diego State, but Anthony's a guy he's not from here. His family, again, he's a Navy kid. He came from Alabama, and his family support is amazing here. He's a kid who will thrive in this town. He's not a kid who's going to, if he stays home, he'll get in trouble. He's going to do well. He's going to do great. And now selfishly, I get to just drive like 5 minutes from my house and go watch him at Snapdragon. So a part of me was just rooting for him because I wanted him to stay at home. And I want to send, I always wanted to send more guys to San Diego State for Modern Day.
What do you think he needs to do? One thing to grow as a player to reach his potential at San Diego State.
For me, it's just consistent running the ball again, and it's maybe not a knock on him now. It's just at that level, there are no bad carries. Like every carry, square up your shoulders, be 225 pounds, finish runs, and do that kind of stuff. I think in high school, guys were, there's a lot of time. I used to tell them, like, hey, man, they don't want to tackle you, especially in the third quarter. You'd see DB stay blocked on purpose sometimes. And in Division I football, in the Mountain West Conference, Pac-12, or wherever he's playing, that's not going to happen. So you have to be, if you get 20 touches, if you get 15 touches, all 15 have to be 10s. You have to max out every time and do those things. But that's probably any kid who's as talented as he is, jumping level. And then just the speed of the game, really. I mean, that's for every kid who leaves high school to go to college.
Yeah, to your point, talked with the up in San Jose this past couple of days ago, and one of their big backs, Jalen Armstead, had a huge game, and it was a breakout thing for him. He's an older guy, and I was asking Coach Hoke about that, and he said He said, I pulled him aside and I said, you got to start running downhill.
Yeah.
And so he was still at that advanced age, like he was still needing to have that message and getting that to your point. So said the exact kind of idea. But another name, that our listeners will know about is Isaiah Buxton. He obviously had a recent decommit from Arizona. He mentioned SDSU as a possibility, waiting to see what coach they can come into. But would be horrible to have you on here and not be able to talk about Bucks a little bit. I mean, what makes him so special as a kid and as a player?
Oh, I'll talk about Buxton all day. He's a special one. He's probably one of top 3 most serious football players I've coached in my 15, 16 years at Modern Day Catholic. I mean, every day is really important to him. Again, another military kid. Both his mom and dad are active duty in the Navy. And there's just a seriousness to him. There's a desire to be great that is like, there's nothing goofy about Isaiah. He doesn't smile if he doesn't think something's funny. There's just a work ethic that comes. And when you're also gifted and you're 6-foot DB with long arms and can run, but you're just ultra competitive. Like, I rarely have seen anyone be that competitive and have a desire to be great, it not translate. Then you add on all the God-given gifts he has, and then you add on what he's done in the weight room and what he's built himself into be. We used to joke around as a staff, and you could ask Coach Braswell. I know you're friends with him. We used to say, Jerry McClure, Trey Edwards, Dominic Nankiel, all these, super Shiraz Bunkum. And I used to say, if any of these guys are making it to the NFL, my money's on Isaiah Buxton, just because he reminds me a lot of Chris Snyder, a kid we had a year ago. There's just something inside of them that when they put on a helmet, they just are different. There's a switch inside of them, and man, when he turns it on, he's a star. I mean, Isaiah Buxton is a legitimate superstar.
Yeah, I thought Boom was under recruited, but that's
yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
you made news yourself, announcing your retirement. Would you mind just going through that and why this was the right time to do that for you?
Yeah. So just recently. I mean, it was something that I've been thinking about for a while. It's not anything new. My wife and I just welcomed Jake Victor, our third child.
Yeah.
I have a daughter who's in the 8th grade. She'll be going to Mater Dei Catholic High School next year. She's a club travel volleyball player, an excellent volleyball player, and she's been a coach's daughter her whole life, staying at school till 7 o'clock at night and doing that kind of stuff. And we have 2 young sons. So our son Johnny is 18 months old, and now Jake is 8 days old. So
Wow.
that's one factor. And the other factor is that I became the director of advancement at Mater Dei Catholic, and that is a big step up in my career outside of football. And I still have some things that I want to do in my career outside of the game of football. And I started coaching football when I was 19 years old, and 22 years and 14 years as a head coach. There's not much more. I feel very comfortable with my career. I feel very blessed, and I got to do it at 2 different schools. I only went to 2 schools my entire career, and 16 years of Mater Dei Catholic has been like being the head football coach in Mater Dei has been the absolute joy of my life, besides my wife and my children. And so it was a difficult decision, but I'm still at the school. I'll be at every game. I'll be their biggest fan. But the program, I love the program so much. I think it deserves somebody that has all the time and effort to be passionate about it and to be obsessed about it, like I've been in my career. But I can no longer be obsessed with it. I can no longer give the time and effort that it takes. So it's me trying to be unselfish a little bit and say, hey, the program deserves something more. And that's something that I've preached to our boys for 14 years, that the program is bigger than anyone. The program is bigger than CJ Verdell. The program is bigger than Anthony McMillian. The program is bigger than John Joyner. Mater Dei Catholic football is going to be rolling, and I'm going to be there week 1 next year cheering them on.
When you reflect back on your time at Mater Dei, you said 14 years. What are you most proud of?
The boys, always the boys. It's always about them. I mean, the relationships you build. I think that I was 26 when I became the head coach there, and I definitely wasn't ready and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't going to say no to it. But when you're young and you want to win, and you want to win championships and rings and banners and that stuff, and that, trust me, that's still inside of me, and I do that. But after that happens, you realize that, like, more importantly than all of that, it's watching guys succeed and the relationships you build. And I have guys sending me pictures of their kids, and I have guys inviting me to their weddings, and I have guys that, call me. And that was one of the really, when the announcement was made, one of the things that kind of touched me a little bit was how many guys reached out, how many former players and that kind of stuff. But it's always about the boys. It's always the boys.
You're not the only coach in San Diego that made a retirement announcement. Brady Hoke doing the same with the Aztecs. What can you tell us about Brady, your interaction with him? Obviously as he's being part of the recruiting process to either your kids or just in general.
So when Brady Hoke his first tenure, when he came in here, he got hired my first year at Mater Dei when I was the first head coach, and we were 1-9. We were the worst team in San Diego. I mean, we didn't have a prospect, and I remember I met him. We went 1-9, and then in June I was at San Diego State for a passing league tournament, just watching, and he walked up and he's like, "Hey, Coach Joyner, how you doing?" And the fact that he knew, and I was like, he had no reason to need to know me. No one knew who I was, and I didn't have any players for him and stuff like that. And I just think they were so genuine with his first group, Tony White and Rocky Long, and that whole first group of coaches that he brought in. I thought were fantastic, and I was super excited to see Brady come back. I love Kyle Hoke. I love to meet. I like their staff right now. I'm sad to see they're struggling, but I have full faith in those guys, and I love Brady personally, and I love him as a football coach. He makes me laugh.
Um, so, I think, you have a very unique perspective, obviously, as a head coach on a topic that everybody around San Diego State, all the fans want to know about. And it's, has San Diego State, in your estimation, done enough to be able to really recruit San Diego, I guess, as well as it could?
That's a tough question.
But you're retiring, so you can tell the
Yeah,
whole
I
truth,
know,
you're
right? I can say
retired.
whatever I want. I would say yes and no, and I would say that
Yeah.
I might be different than most San Diego coaches, and I'll explain. But I want to see every kid from San Diego who San Diego State wants, and they want to stay. I want to see them go. I don't believe San Diego State is the right choice for every kid from San Diego. And I think that it's just natural that we're San Diego coaches and we have pride. And so we say, why are you signing a quarterback from Corona? We got quarterbacks right here. Why are you signing a linebacker from Hawaii? We have linebackers right here. You got to trust those guys that they know the evaluation. They're looking at what they're looking for. I mean, I've been frustrated with them before, but I've been frustrated with UNLV, UCLA, USC. I've been frustrated with everybody who I think should recruit my guy who isn't, or whatever it is. I can tell you that this staff right now, I think, has done a phenomenal job in San Diego. And I think my biggest issues, I think, in the past, especially the most recent past, was on the offensive side of the ball. I think Dimitri Sumler's a rising superstar. I always had a great relationship with Tony White. I like Kyle Hoke a lot, and Kurt Maddox. Those guys are workers. Those guys were always around, always recruiting our guys. I think right when Ryan got here, Ryan Lindley, I saw a big difference on the offense side of the ball, just being around, just recruiting guys, whether they're offering them or not, just being there. And I think that shows by them signing a tailback from Mater Dei. I mean, I last year we had, 5 receivers go on to play college football. And I didn't really see their offensive staff at very much of our practices or anything like that, but their defense staff was there every week, and so again, it's a tough question to ask, because if I say, hey, those guys aren't doing a good job, that's a disservice to a handful of those coaches who I think are great recruiters and have really worked hard and built great relationships with South Bay schools and Mater Dei Catholic.
So a very related question. I appreciate, you being honest with that. I think you got it out. I think you said it well.
I know I could say what I want, right? I'm retiring. I could just.
That's right. I mean, what
flamethrower?
Nobody. Yeah, exactly right. But there is a new staff that's coming in, and nobody knows what the shape it's going to be. All those guys that you mentioned. I think Andre was at the press conference today, mentioned that one of the hardest parts for Coach Hoke is those guys are in limbo. Other schools are recruiting them because they're going to hear, hey, these guys have great relationships in San Diego. Can they bring kids over to where, this other stuff? That's the game. That's what happens. And obviously you just provided a phenomenal resume boost for all of those cats. What does the new hire, the new staff, what do they need to do to be able to be elite at recruiting San Diego?
I think be first. I think that they're, I think that, I'll use an example. We had a cornerback who had an offer from Air Force in Idaho, and his dream, he was like, Coach, if I could go to San Diego State, and his third offer was from Oregon, and his 9th offer was from San Diego State. It's kind of too late then. I mean, Oregon didn't care that he only had Idaho and Air Force. They believed in their eyes. They watched the tape. They met him. They said, this guy is this level of a player. And Oklahoma offered him. And then San Diego, my thing is, like, sometimes, hey, trust your evaluations and be first, especially on local guys. And then with the transfer portal, you might not get them now, but if in 2 years that guy all of a sudden is really unhappy at UCLA, well,
Yeah.
they have a relationship with you. So when they get in the portal, you might be their first caller. They might already kind of rely back on that relationship they built. But if you never really got into the fight of that, well, then there's no real relationship there. And so it's you have to kind of re-recruit them or start a recruitment all over again now that the guy's in the portal. So that would, I would say, be my only thing. But again, I mean, new stadium, there's excitement. I'm sure the new head coach, whoever he is going to bring in an excitement. I think just kind of jump on guys early, man. If you see a guy like there's some I think the current sophomore class in San Diego, across San Diego, is super special. Man, don't wait. Jump on them now. Jump on them all over the place. I think the current sophomore class right now in San Diego mirrors last year's graduating class in San Diego that had, a record number of Division I players. I really believe that. So hopefully they get their fair share of those guys. I mean, you see what like Radcliffe is doing. You see what Lucky Sutton's doing. I mean, we can give a long list of guys who have gone there, and we sent Nico Saragusa up there. He was a USA Today All-American, and so there are San Diego guys that can really make a difference up there. And I'd love, I go to the game, so I'd love to see more of the guys that I know.
One name you mentioned from a previous staff is Tony White. There's a lot of smoke out there that he's being considered for the head coaching opportunity at San Diego State.
Really?
Yeah. And
I started a blog.
What you mentioned him, but like I think one of the strengths that people talk about him is his recruiting. He was like recruiter of the year several times when he was here under Rocky. What makes him such a great recruiter from your perspective, being a high school coach where he came calling to recruit you?
For me personally, I always just want a guy to be really honest with me. There's some guys that like right now there's some guys in that are recruiting all over the country or whatever that I've built relationships with over 10 years that are just really honest guys. The guys that I like, when they tell me something, I believe them. Jimmy Doherty at University of Arizona is a guy that, like, if he tells me something, I believe him. Tim Plow at Cal, who's a local San Diego guy, like when Tim tells me something, I genuinely know he's going to either follow through on that or he says, "Hey, John, we don't see it like that. We just don't think he's right for us." Tim, no problem. And Tony was like that. And like I said, Tony was part of that first staff when we were terrible. And he still was so great to us and came by and built a relationship. And then the first time we had a Division I player was Nico Saragusa. And I watched their recruitment of him. And then I watched when he went up there was Mike Schmidt and, who's a local guy who was the offensive line coach at the time, and Rocky and all those guys. I just thought the way they treated Nico, the way they molded him, the way they developed him as a player and as a person, I just have a ton of respect for those guys. And then these guys leave Mater Dei to go on to college. They're like my little brothers. And so to see them get treated right, it always makes you feel good. But Tony's time at San Diego State and then at Syracuse too, he still recruited here, and he recruited Mac and Buxton at Nebraska. He came by in the spring. I think Tony's an honest guy. I didn't know he was being mentioned for the job. That's kind of cool, but I just think he's a great ball coach. That's one thing, but I always thought he was a super genuine guy.
Okay. It was a great interview, man. It was a pleasure to be able to do this. Congrats on the new position, the new baby, being able to have the perspective on, on your profession, what it is that you want. Congrats on the part that you played in having such a great kid in Anthony McMillian. Super impressive young guy. All of your brothers and friends who are doing great things in the coaching ranks, Mount Miguel, etc. Man, there's a lot to celebrate with you and all your stuff, and really appreciate it. I mean, only 8 days in and getting a little Zoom, man. I know it's a chaotic time. Really, really appreciate it.
I hope you didn't. My 18-month-old was banging on the door. I hope the audio didn't pick that up. But I appreciate you guys, man. This is great. This is awesome. And, go Aztecs, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, Coach. Have a good night.
Take care, boy.
Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. All right, Paul, we got to talk to Anthony McMillian again for the first time in about 10 months.
Right.
He's verbally committed to San Diego State. We were curious how the head coaching retirement announcement would impact his choice. And we also got to talk to his high school coach, John Joyner, who also made a retirement decision. First with Anthony, anything that stood out to you from our conversation with him?
Well, a whole bunch stood out for me from our conversation with him. It's unfortunate that the person who coined this phrase is such a politically polarizing figure, because it's a profound idea, and it's the idea that it takes a village, right, to raise a kid. Hillary Clinton, obviously the person who said it, but the truth of that, I think, was very evident with Anthony. I have a friend who, that's my connection to Anthony, as we've talked about, a coach of his who's known him since forever. And, as Coach Joyner did, talked about how great his parents are. But, you start going through his influences, and you see, talking to Coach Joyner. I mean, that's a good dude, you use TJ McKay, a name that Aztec fans will know or connected with them. And, you see the great kid that Anthony clearly is. We've now talked to him over a year's period of time, multiple conversations, thoughtful, polite, insightful, not there. I mean, he's confident in his game, but there is not a hint of arrogance that comes across from Anthony, which, for athletes, that's even can be a positive sometimes, right? I'm sure he's had coaches in his life who've just said, you realize that you're a ridiculous athletic specimen. You should just go and dominate, because you can, and trying to install some of that arrogance into him, but instill some of it. But that to me was the biggest takeaway is seeing now more of the supporting community and the importance of coaches and what they can mean to young people's lives. I thought was pretty evident, taking the two together. What about you?
I think we obviously wanted to know about his commitment decision and the impact. And I think the best thing he said was, the advice I got was, don't commit to a coach, commit to a school and a program. And that's what he's doing. He committed to San Diego State, not because of Jimmy Beal, Kurt Maddox, Brady Hoke. Those things helped, obviously, as he talked about, all of them. But he committed to San Diego State because it's the best school for him. And that's not going to change with a head coaching change. Now, that doesn't mean that applies for all the 10 other guys that committed to San Diego State. But at least for Anthony, he made his decision that was best for him. And that's not necessarily changing. He still plans to enroll early, be there for spring camp, get a head start on maybe some of the other freshmen, running back or offensive players that are coming in for the class of 2024 that won't be there until the summer. So I think definitely that answer was the most important one that I was looking for in addition to the others. And I think what Coach Joyner said about him, always has a smile on his face. I mean, we've talked to him now twice on a podcast. You've talked to him, you've interviewed him for articles and quotes in that. He always does have a smile on his face. He's happy, energetic. That stuff is infectious because the people that are around you can feel that, and that you can influence them in that way. And for a kid, high school senior, he's got a good perspective in that regard.
Yeah, and I think as a football player, I think one of the interesting things about Anthony is that he does not have an unbelievable huddle tape. Number one, you can tell that I'm gonna say this the right way. The production level in which some of these guys produce their huddle tapes, you could tell that it's just here's the plays. This is what happened, and there wasn't a lot of the other parts of it that try to make it entertaining. But he doesn't have, like, Donald Pumphrey, I would argue, had like one of the most exciting ones, and you watch them and you look at the different huddle tapes and you go and you say, okay, this guy's going to be this guy's going to be that, because they have those big runs and they have those big plays. And that was there with Anthony for sure. But his defensive plays, I would argue, are even more spectacular sometimes than his offensive plays. But then, I thought it was good that Coach Joyner talked about, like, this kid's a legit 220. He's going to get up to 225. He's got 2% body fat. He's going to run a 4.6. And you start to see that, like, that's the kind of, like, package that just plays at every level. And you could understand why, maybe he's not going to have some of the, it's going to be effective, but not spectacular. That's the way that is. And obviously, as he gains athleticism and gains age, he already has quick feet. He already has the ability to make guys miss. Coach Joyner talked about his ability to receive. But I think that it could be his high-end NFL potential, I think, can get masked by the fact that his huddle tape is not, something that's going to wind up on SportsCenter. But I thought it was really good to hear from somebody who has sent many people higher recruits and all that kind of stuff to just describe, no, this dude's a dude. I mean, this guy's a specimen. And you do watch his huddle tape, and there's things that you like about what he does. Unlike somebody that he's about to go join in the room at San Diego State, he runs small. He runs compact. He gets his shoulders in front of him. Lucky Sutton obviously was way more spectacular in the way that he would run and he would do things, but had a hard time getting onto the field because he couldn't get his shoulders in front of him and get downhill. And you're starting to see that in his game, and then all of a sudden he's going to have that breakout game and all of those kinds of things. So I like the way that Anthony runs the ball low. I like that he can get underneath contact, because that just makes him that much more effective, and it's going to be his challenge at the next level, given how athletic everybody else is. But I think San Diego State's really lucky that they approached it that way, that this community that he has around him, it's not for everybody, but, like, why would you want to leave that? I mean, why would you want to, Coach Joyner said, listen, I don't do their end decision. That's on them. But I really like that I get to go see Anthony here just a few minutes up at Snapdragon, because I'm at all the games. We all make decisions in our lives, and I think that you can get uneven where you make decisions solely based off of, like, other people, and I think you can get uneven where you make it solely based off of yourself. But when you find the right balance, and it's just, what a cherry on top that you can, all the people that I described at the beginning, you can help them to have a better Saturday every single time you're playing, because you're playing for the school that they get to go see you in person at. So I thought that was neat for Coach Joyner to be honest about that reality, but also to appreciate the fact that they need to make the best decision for themselves and finding that right balance.
As poor as the running game for San Diego State has been the last 2 years, the one guy that has flashed the best with the best yards per carry average, and the one that the fans have wanted to see, was Jalen Armstead.
Great call.
And we saw the culmination of that with 134 yards last week. And he's listed at 220. I think Coach Hoke mentioned he was, like, closer to 240 at some point last year. He's probably down, hopefully closer to 220 now. But, that's in the same weight class as Anthony. And I think Jalen Armstead is a model that Anthony can look to at his size to say, yeah, I can do the things that Jalen Armstead does with my size. That's not going to be an issue. So yeah, I do like that. I think with some of the smaller, shiftier, faster backs that San Diego State has tried to use over the last couple of years, the Jalen Armstead, Lucky Sutton, Anthony McMillian combination over the next 2-3 years might be what is most effective. And as we talk about all the time, not knowing what the new offensive coordinator who the offensive coordinator is going to be and what they're going to look for, it's hard to say. But, if you would say Ryan Lindley's offense will continue at San Diego State, those three guys could be preeminent in that rushing, the ground game over the next couple of years.
Great call. And again, it's hard to know exactly what is going to be there, but as you say, but you can probably guess that it's going to be. Can you hear them yelling?
No.
Okay, sorry. So it's always hard to know what the next offense is going to be and all that stuff, but you can wager that numbers and winning the numbers game is going to be really important, because that's what modern football is. And there's two kinds of thoughts to that. Is if you can spread the team out and now you have the numbers game in the box with the running game, if you can get a shifty guy who can make one guy miss in the hole, well, that now becomes a really big play. But the other side of it is, if you get a big guy who can hit that hole when you have it there, and he can get you 6, 7, 8 yards, like consistently, 5, 6, that sometimes is even better than the guy who, is going to get hit in the hole. It's going to go down immediately, but then is going to get you a 15-yard later on. And so I think that's another aspect of where these bigger backs could figure into the new offense is, if find out, the bubble screens, all that sort of stuff, get the place where you feel like you got numbers. And now that you have numbers, you got a guy who's going to fall forward, who's going to always get you into, 2nd and 7, who's going to take something at the 2nd and 6 and make it 3rd and 2, that kind of stuff, because that's what modern football is. It's that number stuff. And then, of course, if you get one special enough that has the feet to be able to do both, then obviously you see, like Derrick Henry and guys like that, and what they've meant at that next level, when the numbers game sometimes can be with them and all those sorts of things. So, and then you start building more of those power stuff and things of that nature. So I think San Diego State's got a really good thing. Turning to Coach Joyner.
One thing I wanted to add is this whole thing, this underrated aspect for running backs is falling forward. When you're being tackled, but you're still able to get an extra yard or two every time you're being tackled, you're falling forward. Versus,
why that's underrated, I don't get it, but
yeah.
Right.
And I've running backs over the years that have been so good at that. Getting an extra yard or two helps down in distances, right? And suddenly you're not at 2nd and 10, you're at 2nd and 8. And then maybe you're at 3rd and 1 instead of 3rd and 3. Things like that make such a big difference with the play caller and what you can do, and on those 3rd and 1 versus a 3rd and 3. So I think that stuff is really underrated from a running back, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a bigger guy that can do 100%. That. Some smaller guys are really good at that too. 100%. So it's an underrated feature for running backs that doesn't get talked about enough.
Agreed. My favorite running back of all time is Emmitt Smith. Small guy, but that's what he did. That was his, at his size. That was just his strength. And again, it just matters. If you go, like you said, if you go 3rd and 4, you have to pass. If you fall forward twice and now you're at 3rd and 2, that's where the big plays come from. That's where the one-on-ones come from. That's where, guys, Jalen Armstead had a big 21-yard run on a 4th down because San Jose State wanted to stop him, and they did a run blitz, and that created the gap that he had. And so I agree. I think falling forward is huge. And it's the same principle that San Diego State used to have before, where you wanted to be, ahead of the chains, but it's just done in a different way. And those elements can be important, and I think ultimately should be. But turning to Coach Joyner, I again, same kind of thing. I had talked to some of his friends, some of his assistants, and they've always spoken glowingly of him. And to be able to just do that for the first time, I thought was really good. I appreciated the way, Anthony spoke about him. I'm really, it's interesting to me to see somebody who is driven, competitive, but at the same time is able to say, I got goals outside of football, and that's going to be my priority. I find that pretty like an interesting concept.
Yeah. Yeah, I think hearing from him as a local high school football coach, um, talk about just the connections he has with the San Diego State coaching staff. Um, there's nobody on the current roster from his high school, right? And Anthony's going to be the first guy in a while. And I don't know. He mentioned Nico Siragusa, who's about a decade ago.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many modern day Catholic guys have been on San Diego State between Nico and Anthony next year. There's probably been a couple, but I know there aren't any currently. But he still has that relationship, and he talks about with Sumler and who comes to their practices and Maddox and those guys. And I thought it was interesting how he was talking about, hey, before Ryan Lindley, I didn't see any of the offensive coaches at my practices.
Yeah.
I saw the defensive guys, but not the offensive guys. And that's changed with Ryan Lindley. Now, there hasn't been enough time to make that change, obviously, because Ryan Lindley just got there a year ago. Obviously, Anthony McMillian is one guy. But it's interesting to hear that perspective, because recruiting San Diego for San Diego State is such a hot topic and an important topic. And it's refreshing to hear that perspective, mostly positive, from Coach Joyner. I don't know if all the other high school coaches around San Diego would feel the same or say the same about the San Diego State's recruiting of their kids, but at least getting a perspective from one of the best coaches, one of the best teams up until this year, I guess, was nice to hear.
No, I agree, and I think that the struggles on offense, maybe those guys are spending more time in the film room than what the defensive guys are able to do. So maybe they have a little bit more time. But I know from being in that circle that there were guys who ended up committing to UCLA from that area who in their recruitment would like intentionally go to San Diego State just to get an offer, and it never came. And as Coach Joyner talked about, he had a guy who goes to Oregon. He told him, like, my dream is to go to SDSU, but that offer wasn't there. And so it's really interesting, because the fun part of what we did is we have so much going on, Andre and I, that our coverage of San Diego State is such a hodgepodge in terms of our time, that we had the conversation with Coach Joyner, with Anthony, and then we are doing this takeaway at a different time. And in the in-between, Coach Joyner said, as we asked him, well, what does San Diego State need to do? And they said, you need to be first. You need to be the first person to recognize a kid, trust your eyes, and get the offer out. And I mean, we had not been off of our conversation with him for half an hour. It had not been a half an hour. And one of his sophomores got his first offer from Mater Dei, who also happens to be one of the recruiting coordinators at San Diego State. His son, Larry Parker, son, and he got his first recruit from San Diego State. And it was exactly what Coach had just got done saying. And obviously the new staff and how all that stuff shakes down. But if you got a guy who's on staff and you got a kid who is a stud guy who's worthy of being an offer as a sophomore, like, you would be foolish not to bring this guy back and be able to say, like, all those kinds of things that go with being able to coach your son, and even however those kinds of things will work. But that aside, I do think that that's what it is. I mean, so often other schools come into San Diego and they're guys who offer them first, and then you'll see them pick up a San Diego State offer later. And some of that is the way in which they choose to operate, in terms of not just handing out offers like crazy, but they're not actually committable and all of that kind of stuff. But maybe that needs to change. I mean, maybe they need to, again, I don't know how that works, because the flip side of that is Coach Joyner talked about the honesty in which Brady Hoke and all of his people have always been, and how that's not always the case at all these different places. And so, some of that stuff goes hand in hand, because if you're giving out non-committable offers all the time, then that's kind of a little bit shady and dishonest.
Yeah.
So how to navigate that, I don't know. But to hear a coach who bleeds red and black, and he's at the top, he's the leader of the top program in the South Bay, say, like, we've had kids who, like, I mean, come on, right? They see it, and they've wanted to go to state, but state just was not there for them, and they end up going to P5 schools. It's like, that's exactly what San Diego State has to be able to do to be successful, is to find a reason why somebody who's a little bit next level would actually choose San Diego State.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk Isaiah Buxton. He decommits from Arizona. And as we asked Anthony, and he mentioned, Anthony retweeted it and, put the red and black, and I don't know if it said something about like you in or something like that.
Yeah.
He's obviously good friends with Isaiah. Isaiah has, some offers from Washington State, Nevada, San Diego State. So he's got a decision to make, but he's a as Coach Joyner talked about him, like, he talked about him as being a really, really talented guy, a corner. I think would fit really well with San Diego State. But Isaiah, as he told, I think 24/7 Sports, he wants to know who the head coach is. And it's a little contrast from Anthony saying, I picked San Diego State for the school, not for the coaches. And that's super fair. And I think Isaiah saying, I want to see who the new coaching staff is super fair as well. Everyone has different positions, different perspectives, different needs in that regard, and it's fair on both sides. But I think that's a big get for San Diego State if they can get him, if the new coaching staff can get him, because he was a guy we talked about when we talked with Anthony in January before Anthony had even committed. Like, hey, these two are friends. They play together. They might want to play together at the next level. Can San Diego State make that happen? And they got one. The other went to Arizona, but now they might have an opening to grab him, and I think it would be a nice get, not just as the talent player, but a guy from San Diego, one of the highest. I want to say he's a top 5 San Diego player in the class of 2024. Obviously, I think Julian Sand was one. There was a couple other guys that went to Power 5s, and I think Isaiah was in the top 5 somewhere, and Anthony was like not too far behind him.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And to hear Coach Joyner, anybody who was on Team Buxton and hoping that somehow he could wind up in San Diego, to hear him go through his litany of high end guys, NFL kind of guys, and say, my bet would be on Buxton. That the way that he is on and off the field, my bet is going to be on Buxton. And it's interesting. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, he sounds like in a lot of ways, he sounds like that blue collar kind of guy that has succeeded at San Diego State. We asked him about it. It didn't seem to bite, but man, I think, you can read the tea leaves a little bit with Nevada jumping in there, and Nevada was one of the final schools that Anthony was a part of. So he had also really liked, that school as well. And you would wonder, would any potential pressure be on, especially if, the next staff is not, you never know what on earth can happen. But I think it also just goes to show not only how important it is to get the right person, but how quickly it needs to be able to be done so they can start having these same conversations, because both of these guys want to enroll early. And it's like, that's here, right? Signing day obviously is a month away, and then enrolling early is a month after that or whatever. So it's something that they need to get done quickly. But turning to coaches and things like that, there's been some reports of different people that have been named. And it's really interesting because I spent a weekend just trying to, I don't know, whatever. I was on a drive home from Las Vegas. I was interacting with people probably more than I should or wanted to. But just talking about the fact that, I went to San Jose I saw like their facility, and certainly not trying to knock any of the work that anyone else is doing to make the facility what it is, but uh, it was just a strange thing. Like every other place that you go to, you could like tell a football game was going on in the surrounding area. You know, um, Hawaii would probably be the only other one that was kind of a little bit like, is there a football game going on today? Kind of a thing, But that vibe was definitely there with San Jose. Um, but I think that the fact that Brett Brennan, I suggested that he'd be somebody who should be in the conversation. That's all I said. Is that, and it's interesting the people's response to that. There's a lot of people who feel like San Diego State is like too good for him, and somehow that they need to aim higher. And then there's reports that one of the people that they're interviewing is the offensive coordinator of UNLV. And it's like,
Yeah.
that would suggest that Brett Brennan is too high for San Diego State, not the other way around. And that reality that's closer to the truth.
Yeah, I was going to say you could flip it and say San Diego
100%.
State's not good enough for him
Completely.
in a way.
Yep, 100%. And especially now, I mean, part of what's been great about Brett Brennan is the fact that the facilities were where they were at, and he got a $75 million investment, to where now you could make a very good argument that San Diego State has worse facilities than San Jose State, in every other aspect but the stadium. And the argument was made that like many recruits, when they look at the stadium, doesn't hold the biggest thing for them, because they're going to play there at most 7 times a year. But what does hold weight to them is their practice facility, is their meeting facility, is their cafeteria, if all of this, all of those kind of things, strength and conditioning, and that because of the investment that San Jose State just put in, it could actually be more attractive to a coach than San Diego State is, or at least, especially if you're there, or at least very comparable. And so it's just an interesting argument. And I think like at the end of it, I was using it as a way to just talk about like the great job that he did. But I think at the end of the day, number one, if they could get him, it would be amazing. But I think at the end of the day, it is probably too high for San Diego State to be able to go and get a guy that successful at a different place, much closer than any idea that San Diego State, is so attractive that they're too good for Brett Brennan.
Well, they would be based on the amount of money that he makes. I think they would have to make him an offer that's maybe more than they want to spend on a head coach. They did say that Wicker said they obviously want to get to the top or near the top, which would be around what Brennan's making at San Jose State. But they would obviously have to entice him to leave his current gig with more money and more opportunities, more resources, things like that. And then you got to pay offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, position coaches. So who knows? The other name, you mentioned Brennan Marion, the offensive coordinator at UNLV. Bruce Feldman, I believe, reported that he has interviewed with San Diego State for their position. It's his first year as the offensive coordinator at UNLV. I believe he was an offensive coordinator at Howard previously. And he actually helped Howard beat UNLV in a big upset recently when he was there, which might have helped him get the UNLV job in a crazy way. But he's a younger guy, doesn't have a ton of experience, but he's obviously put in a great resume builder at UNLV this year. What is your thoughts on interviewing him and his potential candidacy for this job?
I would argue that he would be too low for San Diego State to be able to go. Flip side of that is, if their rising sophomore quarterback comes with him, I think that's pretty good. I mean,
he's a freshman, isn't he? Or he'll be a sophomore this year. Got it. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, if he can bring a guy who has really been the catalyst for turning their team around and runs the offense really well. So it wouldn't just be that you would show up and have to teach somebody the offense. You'd have somebody who clearly does it. It's a numbers game, and we just talked about with Anthony McMillian. We just talked about the idea of spreading it out and winning the numbers game and all that kind of stuff. That's what UNLV's offense is, and their quarterback runs that very well. It's run first, so it could fit some of the personnel and things like that are here. So again, if that package is there and somehow you're able, tampering happens all the time. It's just the reality of it, and somehow in that conversation, how close are you to this kid? What's the chances of this guy coming over? Or knowing that everybody wants to know that question, he goes to interview for the job and he just sort of says, there's guys who are really familiar with running the quarterback who would find it very attractive to come to San Diego. For instance, there's guys who are from Hawaii and getting a little bit, or his family in Hawaii is being a little closer to the islands might be attractive for him, and then that's the QB. Obviously he's from Nevada, went to high school there, but so I don't know. I that would be the only way that I would say that it would be like a home run good hire is if he brought a QB with him, because as we discussed in the previous episode coming out at the same time, I think San Diego State next year is a QB away from competing for a conference championship, and if that's the guy, I would say that's the only way. But he's not the only one. The Union Tribune reported that Tony White, which I think you were the first person to point out that clearly it was SDSU that was speaking to Tony White after the press conference came out from Syracuse. I beg your pardon, from Nebraska. Their head coach was asked about what they need to tell people, and he said, "Oh, this was before Syracuse. Syracuse was the group that you linked in the article, but Syracuse hadn't come out and fired."
They had.
It was like a day before, right?
It was, yeah, but the press conference with Matt Rule was the day after.
That's what I mean. That's a quick turnaround is the point. Anyhow, so the line from Matt Rule's interview that I just thought was really interesting, and it really connects to the idea that Brent Brennan is somehow not San Diego State is somehow too good for Brent Brennan. Matt Rule said, "Don't go to a place where the expectations
outweighs the commitment."
And I would argue that could absolutely 100% be describing San Diego State from the fan base level. There's been all those stupid comments about toxicity and all that stuff, and not trying to re-say it, but the fact is, butts in the seat matter. And obviously, if they do prices and they reduce it as much that it seems like JD Wicker and them are talking about, from the outside looking in, I think that is absolutely the case. Brady Hoke went 7-6 last year, and like that was a bad season, and everybody hated it and no good. You can't have a 7-6 season. Rule said you're expected to win 10 games. I mean, that's what that means when you say 7-6 is just a horrible year. It means that double digits is the only way. So trying to piece everything together, it sure sounded like the head coach of Nebraska suggested that Tony White pass on coming to San Diego State.
I took a different spin on it.
Ooh,
it sounded like to me he was telling him to pass on Syracuse because that they were in a tougher conference. They probably didn't spend as much on their coaches as the other teams in their conference, and how they have expectations, which is they fired a coach after, not an awful season. I don't know what Syracuse's record was, but I think they started off pretty good this season.
I think they're one game away from a bowl.
Yeah, so I took it as Matt Rule was saying, don't take a Power 5 job over a Group of 5 job just because it's a Power 5 job, and then maybe they give you a little bit more money. Go to where you're going to have the best chance to win And I don't think Matt Rule knows what's going on with the fan base at San Diego State and the expectations and whatever we want to rehash that's happened this year. I don't think Matt Rule knows enough about it to make that comment based on that. I think he's strictly looking at it as, don't just take the Power 5 job because it pays you $500,000 more a year over the Group of 5 job. Because you got to that's the way I took it. I don't think Matt Rule, I think Matt Rule was saying, it was almost in a way saying, take the San Diego State job over the Syracuse job if they're both offered to you.
That's interesting. Okay, now number one, you have me convinced. I agree with everything you just said. Then I want to ask you a follow-up only because I think your tweet had led me to believe that Syracuse couldn't have offered yet. That if he was offered, that if Syracuse couldn't have called him yet, because which would mean that he couldn't be talking about Syracuse.
No, but I think Matt Rule said a search firm has called me for Tony White's number, and the fact that Syracuse had just fired their coach less than 24 hours before that press conference made me believe that it was San Diego State who had called him last week about.
So he's not completely. So he's not talking in his comments. He can't be talking about Syracuse then.
But he's aware Syracuse fired their coach, and Tony White just came from Syracuse, and there's a lot of chatter about Syracuse going after Tony White. So his comment about which job to take is knowing the landscape of what teams are out there looking for a coach and where Tony White could fit based on where he's been in the past, Syracuse, San Diego State. But my tweet was more along the lines of, there's no way he's been contacted already by a search firm to talk to Syracuse.
Right. It would have to before they let him
which know. Is which my tweet meant was like, hey, San Diego State has already contacted Nebraska about talking to Tony White, insinuating that he's getting interviewed.
I know. I'm totally interested in all of those kinds of things, and I'm kind of with you. Although Matt Rule has spent a lot of time in the Group of 5, so he might be a little bit aware of those kinds of things. But everything you said makes a lot of sense, because then the line that he did say that would suggest that it's not San Diego State is because he said, and then they spend in the middle of their conference. So unless he's referring to Brady Hoke's coaching salary, which as of right now that would still be, but you're right, it's a lot of nuance to be able to describe. But the whole conversation was nuance, I thought it was a great press conference. But Tony White, that's the guy that you said that would be the great hire. And the piece of it that I would wonder is maybe the offensive coordinator from UNLV was also a conversation about having him as the OC here.
It's possible.
And it's just, they know that they interviewed him and all those kinds of things. And you're going to be able to, because that's what I'm going to go and say. If I'm Tony White, I'm going to say, look, I need $1 million. Like, you need to give me $1 million so I can go find the best offensive coordinator. You hold, yes, you give 500,000, more for different guys. I need $1 million. Like, I make $1 million as the defensive coordinator at Nebraska and the assistant head coach. I'm going to make some guy my associate head coach, and I'm going to pay him $1 million. You talk about how you're better than a Group of 5 job, or better than half of the Power 5 jobs, or a lot of the Power 5 jobs. Like, I need $1 million to go and get the best offensive coordinator that I want. And then you go to that guy at UNLV and you say, look, come run this offense here and do the same kind of thing. And here, we're going to give you a Power 5 salary. And I really think that, like, in terms of the PR move, a defensive guy is not going to be thought of very highly, no matter who it is. They could get Bill Belichick and people be like, we need an offensive guy. He's old. Tom Brady would be a better pick. And that's just what it's going to be if they get a defensive guy. But at the flip side of it is if you go and you put in great resources for the offensive guy, you nullify that completely, because if they're paying him $1 million, that they got their pick of guys to be able to come in and to do that job. So PR wise, it's going to be, but I actually think that the coaching pool in terms of money is going to be negotiated by the head coach that they get, and then that the head coach will set his own salary. And if the guy says, "Hey, I want 3," then he'll get 3. You know what I mean? And then be able to then distribute it however he chooses to, which I think is his right. But 2 really interesting names. I think that you had said last time that they're going to come out of the woodwork, guys that you would have never expected. And so the second name that was mentioned fulfills that. But
Marion had been out there as a potential.
Beg your pardon, I missed that. Okay. Oh, and I'm wrong.
I think that Athletic article Bruce Feldman linked from last week mentioned Marion.
Okay.
Along with some, the Ryan Grubb and
I remember those.
Brian Lindgren and stuff like that. So
okay,
I mean,
well, maybe think about it.
They obviously San Diego State needs to do their due diligence and talk to as many people as they can. Even people that aren't interested, you still got to put the call out there and see if they would like to talk. And I have no doubt that they've done interviews or due diligence on more than just Tony White and Brennan Marion. It's just those are the only 2 that have been out there. But yeah, it's they're a week into this, or more than a week into this. So you would think that they've talked to a lot of people. They've maybe X'd people out based on conversations. They've maybe elevated people higher up the list based on conversations. Money plays a factor in it. Obviously, if someone comes in there and says, "I need, $5 million," you can cross them off the list, obviously. But yeah, it's just there's probably a lot more going on than we've heard and that we've seen or read. But I think after this weekend, when Brady Hoke's tenure is officially over, I think we'll start to hear more, and maybe we'll get some more definitive news. Maybe not an actual announcement next week, but maybe more news out there about who's a front runner, who's talking specifics, contract things of that sort.
I agree. I think all of those things are true.
Fun times ahead. One of the interesting things about next week is a lot of teams don't play next week, right? Because it's championship week. So only the teams that are playing in the conference championship will have games to get ready for. So that opens up the possibilities that if there was a coach that's currently on a team and they either did refuse to interview while they're preparing for a game, or their school didn't allow them to interview while they're in a game week, then that'll open up possibilities to interview some more people next week. I don't know if that's happened, but I have heard about that happening in the past where coaches would say, "I'm not interviewing until I'm done with the regular season, or I don't have a game to prepare for that week." So that, I don't know if that's happened, but that's a possibility too.
Yeah, no, makes complete sense. And I think that as they are going through this process, as we talked about, with some of these recruits, early signing days coming up, the transfer portal is opening shortly, and being able to, get somebody in there, let them have conversations. And, the home run for San Diego State is they get a new coach and this potential for this really veteran, really mature, experienced team in 2024 stays intact. And then they sprinkle in a few other guys that are on there via the transfer portal, or the recruits coming in, and the 2024 team gets looking in a very positive direction.
Before we close this out, I want to go back to what we were talking about with Buxton.
Yeah.
Top 6 per 24/7 Sports.
Yeah.
Here are the top 6 ranked San Diego football players in the class of 2024. Julian Sand, going to Alabama, obviously. Number 2 is Will Cianfrini, wide receiver who committed to San Diego State.
Mhm.
I know Ryan Lindley.
Who Anthony said is the other guy that he's talked to.
Right. And I know Ryan Lindley played a big part of that, right?
Sure.
If Ryan Lindley is not there, is Cianfrini sticking there? We'll see. 3rd is Isaiah Buxton.
Yeah.
4th is Damarion White, the defensive end edge guy for Granite Hills, who is uncommitted right now. And I don't know if San Diego State is actively I know they offered him a while ago, but I
don't know where that's out of it. Yeah.
And then 5th is Anthony McMillian, San Diego State. So there is a possibility San Diego State, if they get Buxton, they've got 3 of the top 5 San Diego kids coming to San Diego State, which I think would be pretty darn good. Number 6 is Josh Galan's offensive lineman for Eastlake. He's going to UCLA. Those are the top 6. I know, that's your school.
He's my student.
Your students, yes.
Yeah, actually.
Those are the top 6 San Diego ranked players in the class of 2024.
Good kid.
And they're in the top 60. They're in the top 70 of California. All 6 of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, like you said, it's pretty amazing that they all, half of those are, from the same Eastlake area. It's kind of a trip.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed our conversation with Anthony, Coach Joyner, our discussion about some of the coaching interviews that have been reported to take place. Obviously, we will keep an eye on what's going on with the coaching update as the season ends and, transfer portal is beginning, early signing period. December, San Diego State will not have a game in December, but they will definitely have a lot of news to talk about and to share and to write about. So it'll definitely keep Paul and I busy through the holidays for sure.
Yes, sir. Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving, Andre. Hope you have a great time, brother.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.